Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock. Previously on the Non-Essential Podcast. Hey, you guys ever hear of the Aristocats? Shut the fuck up about the Aristocats. And then there's like a fucking car chase and guns going off and shit. And yeah, if you listen to the last episode, we are embroiled in a drama and a tale of intrigue like no other.
About the Aristocrats, cats. That part wasn't.
Yeah.
That's literal.
Yeah.
So if you haven't listened to the last episode, this is a continuation of that story. So you may want to do that. You may not. Sometimes I run into podcasts like that.
I don't really give a fuck what you want to do, pal. Listen to the last one, or you're gonna sit here fucking with your dick dripping all over you, wondering what the fuck, what happened. It's like I
do that. I use Spotify for some podcasts.
I use Spotify for dick drippage.
That too. But it just plays, like, if you have a podcast you follow, it'll just play it in like the order, the newest to the oldest. Like, yeah. I think you can change the order, but that's the default. And there's one that I listen to that it's like once every couple weeks they'll do a 2-part episode, and he's always like, this is a part 2, because I don't listen daily, so I'm catching up, and he'll be like, this is part 2 of a 2-part episode, so if you haven't listened to the previous one, you may want to do that one first. I'm like, that's too much fucking work. I'll listen to it backwards. In fairness, it's not a narrative story type podcast like this, so it doesn't typically matter that much.
Yeah.
But if you want to listen to this one and then the first part, that could be fun.
Yeah, if you want to fucking Tarantino it up, go for it. I don't care. We've been reading a story. So we started reading a story last time. It was called Lost Episodes Can Be Found Again. It is by some owl out there. Some owl.
Late night owl.
Hopelessnightowl is
there
the
you go.
user.
That's close.
And yeah, so the quick recap, because I don't want to belabor it for too long for people who did their homework. This is a story about a guy. He grew up and he saw a really fucked up version of the old animated film, The Aristocats. And it put him down a fucking rabbit hole where he's searching and reading up on all these fucked up versions of cartoons that got released in limited quantities to the public. And like, just as he was kind of on it, like so the fucking guy went to Minnesota on vacation just to ask people about these goddamn cartoons.
Because as we all know, Minnesota is the hub capital for missing cartoons.
Yeah. Satanic animation. Home of satanic animation. And the Vikings.
And in fairness, I kind of liked the idea better before he started tracking it down, that it's like, oh, you see this thing that so like fucked up, it messes you up for life, but then goes away and nobody knows what you're talking about, and it being like that, it doesn't really exist, because that's kind of how it starts. He saw it as a kid, but then there was like no trace or mention of it anywhere. He couldn't find anything.
Yeah,
it's like,
so we're about halfway through it, and throughout the first half of his journey, it's a lot of like carrot dangling in front of him, but it always turns out to be like, yeah, it is a fucked up cartoon, but it's not what he experienced, what the protagonist experienced. But there's always just like one more thing that pops up that like keeps the fucking breadcrumb trail going.
Like Minnesota.
Yeah, so where we last left off, he went to fucking Minnesota and he was staying at a cabin because this cabin area in Minnesota, they had an event where like the cartoon broadcasted in the area and it like traumatized people. So he was asking somebody who was alive during it. You would think I would have remembered to look up how to pronounce this broadcast, because I know they're not going to shut the fuck up about it. I did not. So I'm going to keep saying Kabito Gama wrong.
I like it though, because it sounds Japanese instead of
Minnesota. It looks Japanese.
Maybe it is.
And Minnesota's basically Japan.
Yeah. You know how a lot of big cities have, like, Little China, but Minnesota is basically Big Japan.
Yeah. So, like, it's one of those things where he like, asked, he got all this information, this story of, like, you know, this fucked up... The cartoon that happened in this Kibito Gama broadcast was a Flintstones cartoon where, like, Barney dies and shit. And it's one of those things where he's like, well, that is weird, but that's not what I experienced. And as he's driving home, somebody ran him off the road, as in, like, quit fucking asking questions, you know, which is, or like,
you're just a big fucking dork.
Like, yeah, hey, nerd. Yeah. I often run people off the road to call them a nerd.
Because you're a jock.
But
that's how it is.
Yeah.
Nerds are
as
jocks.
You can tell, all jocks do this for years.
Yeah.
But that's also really funny to me, because it's like, if you were trying to keep this shit a secret, just don't mess with him.
Yeah, he found nothing.
He never finds anything conclusive. But by trying to intimidate him like this, you're guaranteeing there's something that you're trying to hide. So where we last left off, he just got ran off the road, and he did not tell the police that it was because he was investigating a fucking Aristocats cartoon.
See, the other thing is, it's Minnesota. It's like a 98% chance that it was just a drunk driver. Like,
very true. Yeah.
Right.
So let's get into it. Despite this experience, I decided to stick my neck out a little more. This was getting serious, and I needed a clear picture of what I was up against. I had an acquaintance in the FBI. Well, that's fucking convenient.
I think most of us have a close friend in the FBI that's willing to risk their jobs. Yeah.
You know? I had an acquaintance in the FBI who owed my family the favor of a lifetime. What the fuck does that mean? Like, was he...
Yeah.
The mob killed a guy for him? Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not... I did not pre-read this. So, I guess I'm not prepared for how absurd this could get. I convinced him over dinner that I paid for. That was the favor. He bought him a fucking Denny's meal or some dumb shit.
Oh man, moon over my hammies can, like, any FBI agent will do whatever you want for one of those.
I will say, I went to a Denny's recently for the first time in, like, over a decade. Pretty damn good food.
We don't have many around here. We had one out, and the last time I went to one was when I was living in Pittsburgh, so that was 23 years ago.
I got a club sandwich, and they, like, sliced some fresh avocado on it. It was fucking tasty.
Like at the table, like a hibachi place, like.
Yeah, the dude cut his fingers off to do it. It was pretty morbid.
Do they still just do the like ice cream in the little baseball helmets? Because that was the whole fucking.
I don't know. It was like lunch, so we didn't do like a dessert or anything.
Yeah, you do it for the baseball hat, though. I mean, fuck.
Yeah.
Now I want to go there after the show just for that. And they won't have it, and I'll be sad.
This Denny's did not have 3 of its walls completed. So,
were you sure it was a Denny's or just some guy named Denny?
It was a restaurant that coincidentally had menus that said Denny's on it, which is a great idea. If you're gonna,
these out of a dumpster.
If you're gonna open a restaurant, just like open a restaurant and then just like steal Denny's food.
Anyway,
I convinced the FBI agent over dinner that I paid for to look into the Lost Media Group for me. So the Lost Media Group, if you don't remember, they were the ones who were essentially building. They were editing and releasing these fucked up cuts of cartoons. A few weeks later, he had a document for me. It was an analyst report containing all the information the FBI had on this mysterious group. It read, "The information known by the Bureau about the Lost Media Group is so scant as to strongly suggest that the group does not really exist. This report assumes the existence of the group for investigative purposes. However, most of the information contained herein is more speculation than confirmed fact. Most of the testimony concerning the LMG has been hearsay and off the record. The exact nature, size, organization, origins, and goals of the LMG are mysterious. It is said to be a multinational organization that is embedded in multiple entertainment industries and is most active in cities with large concentrations of entertainment companies such as Los Angeles, New York City, Atlanta, Toronto, and Tokyo. All of this to fucking pump out a cartoon 2 people are going to see.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was waiting for the report to end. We don't have any information because they make cartoons and we don't fucking care.
It was like
we're the FBI. We have zero reason to investigate this group.
We don't care about your memes, kid. Membership is by invitation only and is rumored to include a number of wealthy entertainment executives and financiers. Second-hand informants report that the group uses a variety of criminal tactics, including bribery, blackmail, and violence, to prevent the dissemination of information concerning them. It is speculated that the LMG uses other crime syndicates as proxies for their operations in order to obfuscate investigations into their activities, and that they mislead people into believing that they are more powerful than they really are.
Because all they do is make cartoons.
Because they literally just like, hey, you want to see Barney get his head cut off? Like, it's just the weird kid in middle school.
I was going to say the FBI strongly suggests the Lost Media Group is a single 13-year-old.
Claims that the group possesses supernatural powers are likely the result of selective disinformation campaigns. The Lost Media Group first came to the Bureau's attention during the 1970s, but is said to date back to the early 1900s. During the 1920s and 1930s, an urban legend emerged concerning mystery reels, which were said to be altered versions of syndicated movie theater reels that differed significantly in content and tone from the standard copies. The Bureau believes that the lack of public awareness of entertainment industry standards and copyright contributed to the fact that such works were not reported to the media or law enforcement. A reoccurring theme in testimony concerning mystery reels is that they often contained violent content that was more extreme than mainstream theater content, and several former members of censorship boards have claimed to have received complaints about them. Witnesses also claim that mystery reels based on live-action films featured different actors, and that these actors in retrospect seem to have been coerced. One witness claimed that an actor in a silent mystery reel appeared to be saying, "Help me," before being silenced by someone off-screen. These claims have led to the Bureau to believe that the LMG may have participated in trafficking human beings. The group is also rumored to have been involved in the production and distribution of snuff films, though there is little evidence to support this claim, as there is to support the very existence of snuff movies. Other crimes the Lost Media Group is suspected to be involved in include media piracy, drugging of actors, trafficking in endangered species for use in films, and recording executions for other criminal organizations.
So this is just Hollywood.
Yeah, so I think that's what they're getting at, is like, you know, fucking Hollywood creep organization is behind it all. But why would you jeopardize that to be like, you want to see a fucking cat get cut up?
What if, yeah, like I said, what if Barney Rubble died?
Yeah, wouldn't it be fucked up if fucking SpongeBob had a gun?
Again, I do super respect the dedication to spend all these resources just to fuck with like two or three people's heads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I can get behind that. I mean, if I was a bazillionaire, I probably would do something like that. Like, let's just pick a random person and make them think they're completely insane.
This is fucking Homeward Bound.
Have you ever heard of the, what do they call it? The Voice of God weapon that was supposedly developed by the U.S. military, where they can, like, basically it projects a sound wave so concentrated that, like, from over a distance, and I don't know what the max distance is supposed to be, but they can, like, talk into it like a loudspeaker, but the only person that can hear it is, like, somebody in the direct path of the beam. So basically what you do is, like, you aim it at somebody and
God's talking to him.
Basically, not necessarily God, but you can. That's why it's got that. But basically, you make them think that they're insane because they hear this very clear voice talking to them that nobody else can hear. And it's like, I want one of those for nefarious purposes. It's like, it would just be fun to go to the park and make somebody think that they've gone insane.
No, I didn't hear that. I don't know why you said voice of God and I immediately went to the brown note. Like,
well, those are two technologies that really need to be combined. Oh man, my favorite sports teams would win every contest. They're like, it's weird. Every team Cleveland plays, the quarterback just gets diarrhea in the middle of the play.
This is the third starting pitcher in this World Series who had to leave the fucking game with shit dribbling down his drawers.
It's weird.
I pondered over the report. Membership by invitation only. Well-funded, well-connected, must be well-organized. Yet their activities seemed nothing short of bizarre. Why would a group with the kind of resources this group apparently had, unlike the FBI, I was beginning to take the existence of the Lost Media Group for granted at this point, not spend these resources on more traditional and profitable criminal activities? Why would that many people commit so many resources and risk so much just to make movies? I feel a lot better when we mock these stories and then the main character's like, yeah. Why?
Well, it means that we're probably going to get an answer.
Yeah.
Well, whether or not it'll be satisfying, we'll find out.
There's no way such a sophisticated syndicate can make enough money off of simple piracy to be considered profitable. And the other crimes listed in the report would seem beyond the scope of expertise of a cabal ostensibly comprised of people in the entertainment industry. Was it not about money? An ideological or religious motivation, perhaps? Certainly it didn't fit any religion I could think of, and it didn't seem like they were interested in influencing elections. Their motives must be subtler. They had a message they wanted to send, or an influence they wanted to create, using the power of mass media, and were willing to dabble in any number of crimes toward whatever their ultimate end was.
But is it mass media if it's only seen by a handful of people? I think
mass media, 3 VHS tapes, spread far and wide. Part 5. A few weeks later, I received a reply from the former Lost Media Society admin. So if you don't remember from the last one, the Lost Media Society is not the Lost Media Group. This is just a bunch of weird film enthusiasts on a forum that our main character hooked up with. So I received a reply from the former Lost Media Society admin, the one who was said to be attempting to collect lost episodes. He told me he was not aware of an Aristocats lost episode version, but that he was nevertheless now in possession of several lost episode copies and was willing to show them to me for a price.
Of course.
Like, to be exact, he wanted $1,000. Fuck you.
I was going to say 2 Denny's meals.
I'd be like, I do not care that much about my fucking childhood trauma. Fucking
yeah, if I was going to spend $1,000, I'll just go see a therapist.
Yeah, I'll do what I fucking did. I bought a mountain bike like a week ago. Like, I'll ride a bike and feel like a kid again. That's give you $1,000, asshole. I agreed without hesitation. All right, here's an idiot. I was not at a point in my life where I could comfortably spend $1,000 on anything, let alone a prospect that might not deliver. Buy a fucking gaming PC and let it go. Like,
okay. Well, I mean, in fairness, maybe he's financially stable. He did just spend a shitload of money to take a vacation to Minnesota,
you know what?
And then get his car totaled.
Point. How can he say, like, I didn't feel comfortable spending $1,000? Like, you just fucking hauled ass to Minnesota on a whim, not because you wanted to go, like, get drunk at a cabin, but because you wanted to bug a bartender about fucking a goddamn cartoon. You have way too much money, is my point.
Yeah.
But I was afraid trying to talk him down to a lower offer would make him break contact, and something in my gut told me his claims at least were sincere. He gave me the address of a secluded this is such a bad idea. He gave me the address of a secluded cabin he said he would rent for the purpose. Dude, you're going to end up in a fucking basement.
Yeah.
Which was several states away. He said to come alone and gave me the exact date he expected me there.
So again, he doesn't bat an eye at this request, but the $1,000 he can't afford to spend. Maybe it's because he just keeps leaving his job randomly.
You know what? He would be like my least favorite coworker. For sure. Because it's like, if you're just legit with me and you're like, hey, I'm taking time off, taking a vacation. But it's like, nah, man, I need to take this time off.
Well, you know, he talks about nothing except lost episodes at work, too.
It's like, maybe that's the trade. I was like, well, at least we don't have to hear him talk about the fucking Aristocats anymore.
I'd love to go, but I'm out of paid vacation. Oh, we'll give you more.
Yeah, I'll donate mine. Just go, please.
You say mysterious cabin in the woods that you may not come back from? Yeah, we can't miss out on that. I mean...
Do you need help paying for it? I'll pay half the $500 down to keep you there watching cartoons. I was a little put off by his curt tone, but figured he was paranoid of someone stealing his collection, or worse, being hunted down by the people who made the items. I prepared for the trip and left immediately. When I arrived in the state where the cabin was, it was still a couple days until our meeting date, so I checked into a hotel. I was up late watching TV in my hotel room with the lights off when I found a channel playing the Aristocats. This dude is fucking weird.
You know, he was just surfing, like, he wasn't actually watching TV. He just constantly changes channels until he comes across Aristocats.
The dude just carries a flash drive around, plugs it into his TV to watch the Aristocats. It was in the middle of the movie, but I kept watching. I grew nervous. I'd already watched the whole movie and knew there was nothing unwholesome in the standard version, but the setting, alone in the dark with just the light of the TV, was strongly reminiscent of my traumatic virgin experience with the feature. Don't call it a virgin experience.
Oh, well, I'm guessing that all of his experiences in life are virgin experiences. It's just a hunch.
Yeah. I just don't want to think of, like, fucking, you know, the Aristocats pop my cherry.
Well, I don't know. There is a whole corner of the internet for that.
Soon, though, my unease turned to comfort. I realized there was nothing to fear. Sure, at this point I was convinced that somewhere out there existed a violent and twisted version of the Aristocats, one which I had been unfortunate enough to somehow see as a child, but that didn't matter. It couldn't hurt me now. I laughed as I realized I now had the chance to relive the memory without the trauma. So I grabbed a snack and continued watching in the dark, for once able to enjoy the film as it was intended to be enjoyed, by a fucking middle-aged man in a dark hotel room.
Yeah, I'm not 100% convinced that movie was ever intended to be enjoyed. It's just there.
I was able to appreciate what a truly great movie it was, how much effort was put into the animation and voices, how great even the music was. The soundtrack was a little distorted, though. As I turned up the volume to hear it better, I realized it wasn't the TV. The music became faster and more distorted, and the scene began morphing into abstract images. I heard screams from the TV, and disturbing images too brief to make out clearly flashed on the screen. This all ended with the still image of Berlioz, the one I found on the internet with his eyes bloodshot. On the image were 2 words in red caps. Stop asking. The screen then went to black.
I'm pretty sure that's just the standard channel at any Red Roof Inn.
Yeah, well, you keep the TV on. Robert Downey Jr. shows up mid-credits and reveals that he's going to be the Aristicat, Captain Aristicat. The screen then went to black. I sat in total darkness, my body quaking, tears and snot running down my face, hardly able to catch my breath. I turned on the lights, threw up in the bathroom, and switched the channel. All the stations were playing normal television, which was somewhat comforting, but I still checked out of the hotel and went to a different one. At this point,
Can you imagine explaining that? Is there something wrong with your room? The Aristocrats.
Yeah, you ruined the Aristocats for me.
Cats, yeah. I keep saying aristocrats because I can't get this stupid fucking pun right.
Yeah.
But
at this point, I considered giving up the hunt. My first goal... What hunt? This is a thing now. If you find the actual
that's the other
video,
thing. What do you need to really prove at this point? You're like, oh, yeah, this is a thing that probably exists.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Yeah, it's not... You don't have to... are you going to kick their ass when you find them? What's the goal here? Oh, he answers it. Again, reading my mind. My first goal had been to find out if lost episodes were real, and I had certainly achieved that. Whether going further and finding out the exact nature and origin of them was worth it was becoming an increasingly dubious prospect. Whoever was behind them had powers and resources to seriously threaten me, and I didn't know if full closure was worth risking my neck any further. In the end, I decided to keep going, though. I was close now, and if there was some secret, powerful group behind all these lost episode stories, the world needed to know. Fuck you. No, they don't.
You know what the world would do if you came out and had hard proof that there's a group making snuff versions of cartoons? They'd
go start a podcast like we do and make fun of it.
Right.
Who were they to try to intimidate me into giving up? No, I wouldn't give up the hunt. At that moment, I doubled down in my determination. At the appointed time, I showed up at the cabin. It was night, and the moon flooded the lonely cabin in an eerie glow. There was a vehicle in the driveway, but the lights were out, and there was no other sign of occupancy. I timidly went up and knocked on the door. Without turning on any lights, the man greeted me. For his own safety, I will not describe the man, save to say that he appeared middle-aged. Why tell me that much? You don't have to say anything at all. To protect him, I'm just going to give you a fucking ballpark. Got to give him something in case they want to fucking kill him.
I'm just picturing this guy opening the door saying, "You're not as young as I thought you'd be."
Yeah,
but at least you're not.
That'd be hilarious.
But at least you're not Chris Hansen.
That'd be hilarious. He's like, "Oh, you're too old." Shuts the door. So you were serious about this. Good. Do you have the money? I gave him the wallet of cash. He turned a lamp on and counted it out, then motioned for me to follow him to another room. He closed the door behind him before turning on the light. The room had a high ceiling and nature paintings on the wall, along with a single shelf of old books that were clearly there for decoration. Centered on one of the walls was a large plasma television. There was a lot of space, but the man himself had only put a couple of chairs and some plastic storage tubs on the floor. So here's my collection. It ain't very big, but you'll have a hard time finding these items anywhere else. Sorry to have to charge you so much, but you got to realize I'm taking a huge risk by showing this stuff to a stranger, so you got to make it worth my while. I trembled with anticipation. At last, I was about to have some real concrete answers.
Of what?
That this shit you knew exists?
Right. Also, you don't seem to be able to mentally handle the one. Do you really want to watch more? Like,
you threw up when one was slightly mean to you.
Right.
Like I said in my email, I don't have, nor have I previously heard of an Aristocats video made by these people, but from how you described it, I completely believe you saw it. It fits right in with this kind of thing they would make, he continued. By they, you mean the Lost Media Group? I interjected.
He pissed himself.
Yeah.
Don't say their name.
We got to do 3 Hail Marys now. Yeah, they would be behind the thing you saw, along with that Batman Lost episode, if it indeed exists. Though I haven't been able to find it myself. But again, wouldn't be surprised. I don't know what their goal is in making these things, but they're interesting as hell, so I collect them. I asked if he could share some of his contacts, but he flatly refused.
You know what? I'm just thinking here. Because he's like, yeah, the Lost Media Group in these movies, but I've not heard of the Aristocats one. Now I'm really enjoying the idea that maybe there's a knockoff, like there's a straight-to-home video kind of equivalent for these Lost episodes. Like, this powerful cabal and then just like some guy out of his apartment in New York City.
Yeah, it's like how, Pixar makes A Bug's Life and then, fucking... there's like another animation coming like, we'll make ants.
Yeah, or even better, how there's like A Bug's Life, and then it's always out of like Taiwan or China, and like an insect.
A life of bug.
Right. And they're all different insects, but shaped exactly like
the living bug.
Yeah, like this is a sidetrack, but so my oldest grew up watching Cocomelon, which, if you don't know what that is, good for you. It means you don't have her spend time around kids. But it's just some like mindless, like pretty poorly animated kids show that's all just about song. And they're all stupid fucking songs. Like, socks, gotta put on my socks, let's go put on socks, that kind of shit. Kids love it because it's mindless and repetitive. Well, then, like, she started watching some, it was called like Baby Something. The family is the exact same. It's a 2 brothers and a sister and a mom and a dad, and they look like as generically identical as you could possibly get. And they're the same kind of songs, but like slightly different words. Because most of the music, I've come to realize, is just like public domain music that they put like corny ass words to. Mm-hmm. So they can use the same music and just come up with their own word. And it's like, nice. That's what I'm picturing. The Aristocats Lost thing is, it's just like a Taiwanese knockoff of the...
Yeah. And I don't understand why it's not equally heartwarming. I asked if he could share some of his contacts, but he flatly refused. I only give that information to trusted friends, and even if you were one of them, I would make you pay more than you could afford. Please don't ask me that again. You're lucky I even agreed to show you my collection. I was a little flustered by his tone, so I just nodded. Then we got down to business. He opened one of the tubs and pulled out a VCR, along with a black VHS tape with a white label that read Pink Panther in black Sharpie. He hooked up the VCR, inserted the tape, and played it. It was the last episode from the Pink Panther cartoon series, which was a show consisting of short sketches about 5 or 6 minutes each, with the Pink Panther going on various solo adventures and getting into trouble with other characters and situations, which he manages with his superior mastery of cartoon physics. There's never any dialogue save for the occasional wordless exclamation or babbled nonsense, like in the Tom and Jerry cartoons, and every short has the Pink Panther theme playing throughout. I had watched
this. Touche to this author for making me feel old as fuck that they have to describe what the Pink Panther is, and then make me realize that, yeah, you do. Because it probably...
It is a shame, because the old Pink Panther movies are some of my favorites. And they always started with a Pink Panther cartoon. Mm-hmm. And every short has the Pink Panther theme playing throughout. I had watched a little of the show as a kid, but didn't have many memories of it. This episode was called 40 Shades of Pink, which I assumed was a pun on how Ireland is said to have 40 shades of green, since this was a St. Patrick's Day themed episode. It took place in a Greenland that, while not explicitly identified as Ireland, was obviously supposed to be the Emerald Isle, or at least some generic insular Celtic fantasy land. The short involved the Pink Panther trying to steal a pot of gold from a leprechaun, or rather the recurring Little Man character dressed as one. As the Pink Panther was walking over a rainbow like a bridge, a storm cloud caused it to disappear from under his feet. He fell, and there was a sickening crunching sound. The Pink Panther was shown bleeding out on the ground, bones jutting out. Then he saw the leprechaun's pot and crawled over to... I like the commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to die a rich man.
Yeah. Despite his injuries, a smile of victory crawled across his face as he peered down into the pot. The leprechaun appeared from behind and pushed him in, closing a lid over him and then roasting him alive over a fire. The episode ended. In
fairness, he roasted him barely alive, so.
Barely alive, yeah. The episode ended with the sound of the Pink Panther screaming. Lame, I thought. Someone basically just took the Pink Panther cartoon and gave it the itchy and scratchy treatment. It was somewhat disturbing that whoever did it clearly had access to the original animation resources to make it look exactly like a real episode. But
yeah,
overall,
because the original animation resources were paper and pencils and ink. Like, if you're a good artist, it's not like you need access to like the original like character sheets and stuff. You just fucking draw it.
But overall, it was underwhelming compared to what I was expecting. And you're $1,000 into this shit now. The next item was a copy of The Lion King. This time it was a proper factory copy with a retail jacket. The man told me the movie itself was normal, but there was a special animated short at the end of the tape with psychedelic properties. He warned me that the experience would be far more intense than the Pink Panther tape, and even asked me if I had a heart condition. Despite his warnings, I insisted on going through with it. He refused to fast forward to the short, saying he wanted to keep the tapes from warping even though he had the footage digitally archived. Fuck you, I paid you $1,000.
This is a guy that just needs a friend. He's like, he wants him to stick around longer.
And watch cartoons. But it's a pretty good deal. Like, I get a friend for an evening and $1,000.
Well, yeah. Yeah, he just turned the protagonist into an escort, basically. But it's like a reverse escort, one that pays you.
I'm gonna get an escort and make her just watch cartoons with me.
And then give me $1,000.
Yeah, and she'll feel so bad she'll give me money.
In fairness, I kind of figure that's how it would ever go if I tried to hire another. She'd just pity me and be like, here's some money.
Go get a Blizzard, kid. You ain't ready. You ain't about that life. After the credits, there were some special features, including some animated shorts I had never seen before. When the title appeared for a short called The Lion, the man paused and asked once again if I was sure I wanted to proceed. I nodded, and he played it.
Oh, so he'll pause it, but not fast forward it.
Yeah, well, I don't want the tape getting scratched. The short featured what was apparently a version of Scar, but the art style was completely different. It was a 2D animation, but somehow much more realistic than Pixar animation. It's hard to explain. It wasn't like CGI realism, but there's so much detail and effort put into the character that it gave the impression of realism while still being paradoxically fantastical. The clip showed Scar walking around a white background before stopping to face the viewer. The camera began slowly zooming in on his face, and his eyes began glowing red. Threatening jungle music began playing. Suddenly, I became very nervous. A vicious grimace emerged on Scar's face, the kind a predator makes before striking. His mouth opened wide, showing rows of sharp teeth, and I heard realistic growling sounds. His face wrinkled in a pattern consistent with the face a lion makes before pouncing. My nervousness turned to terror. My gaze was transfixed on the screen, and I couldn't look away. It was only animated, and even if it wasn't, the lion couldn't get me through the screen, but I was paralyzed as if facing a real predator. I was in a trance, one that didn't break until Scar jumped and I screamed for my life. I kept screaming until the man shook me out of it. Sorry about that, he said, but I did warn you. Once I got my bearings back, I asked for the next item. He gave me a puzzled look, as if he had expected me to just give up and want to go home after the last tape. But he shrugged and got the next one. It was another home VHS tape labeled Super Bowl 2000. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
All of this was to make this officially a sports podcast. Fuck you guys. The next one won't do anything to you like the Lion video, but it's disturbing in what it shows. In fact, I'll just tell you what it is. This tape shows a riot that didn't happen. If you didn't know, there was no sports riot at the 2000 Super Bowl. Certainly not in the stadium itself, but the tape shows just that. Once again, the man refused to skip to the interesting part to preserve the integrity of the tape. In the third quarter, a referee made a call that didn't sit well with Titans fans, and someone threw a beer bottle. More people started throwing things, and it escalated into a full-scale riot in which spectators swarmed the field and attacked each other. See, it didn't happen because it's not Eagles fans. I'm kidding. We wouldn't do that. We would get drunk and boo our own team.
Yeah, that'd be the thing. Yeah, it'd be a call for the Eagles. You're like, those bums don't deserve that.
That's the thing. Like, people don't understand about Eagles fans. Like, they get the reputation for being, like, violent and rowdy. But the thing is, like, if our team doesn't show up and try, we're not going to try enough for a riot. We're just going to be, like, on Twitter that evening, tweeting them directly, like, you're a fucking bum.
Drunk tweeting, of course, but
yeah, hey man, who fucking ran faster than and further in a single football game than I've ran my entire life. You're a bum.
Yeah.
You could see the majority of the crowd slowly evacuating the venue while a small but determined segment began vandalizing the place and having sporadic brawls. There was no commentary at this point, just raw stadium footage that cycled through various venue cameras.
I like the idea because at the time he would have still been around. John Madden just like giving the play-by-play of a
the
riot.
beer bottle hit him there. Boom! right in the head. About 20 minutes into the riot, the tape ended. The tape did not cause me to experience abject terror like the last one. In fact, the riot hadn't even been that bad compared to other sports riots I'd seen. But I found it disturbing on a deeper level. The fact that they could alter a recording of a sports event to make it show something that so blatantly didn't happen in reality terrified me. Now, for me, that just pisses me off. That means they could have edited every single Eagles Super Bowl into an Eagles win if they wanted to. Like, I didn't have to feel that pain every other time. They could have only have done it in one of two ways, with editing techniques that were well beyond what was publicly known to the world, or with some type of magic. Or acting.
Yeah, I like magic. It's gotta be magic.
Yeah. I still asked to see the next item. The man said it was the last one. Some collection, dude. You shoved all this shit into a tub. It's 4 tapes.
It's $250 per movie.
$1,000 to watch fucking 4 goddamn videos.
And he said plastic tubs, plural.
Yeah, each one gets its own tub. It was a plug-and-play video game this time. The man explained that the Lost Media Group was known to dabble in other mediums besides movies and television, and that in particular they were said to produce a lot of lost video games, though this was the only one he had been able to acquire. The game was labeled Pokemon Black Carbonite. I actually remembered hearing about Nintendo making a Pokemon plug-and-play game that was canceled, but I didn't know if that was the title. The thing was black and bore a white image of Pikachu sporting a menacing grin. I'm not going to let you play this. I myself will never play it again. This thing will mess you up and is downright dangerous. You can examine the hardware, though. I took it from him and did so. The first thing I noticed upon closer inspection was a fissure in the control pad. A lot of force had been applied to make the crack. Then I noticed that some of the plastic was warped, melted. I looked at the man. He gave me a look back, a look of understanding that there was nothing more that needed to be said. I handed the game back to him. The man said some goodbye formalities, put his hand over my shoulder, and aggressively led me to the door, closing and locking it behind me. He never saw my camera. During the lion short, I had managed to snap a quick digital photo of the TV screen while the man wasn't looking, and I had put the camera back away before the whole bad acid trip thing. I had the photo enlarged and enhanced and studied it. It was still frightening, even without the psychedelic properties of the animated short. Again, despite being a cartoon, it had such detail and realism that it seemed more alive than I thought a cartoon could. I did some research on art and animation styles, and learned that this technique was known as hyperrealism, a style intended to give intense lifelike detail using traditional, non-digital art methods. Some pieces of this genre are almost indistinguishable from photographs. The lion wasn't quite that realistic. You could still tell easily enough that it was a cartoon, yet it was somehow as visually striking as a real photo of a lion. This is a reoccurring thing in these creepypastas, like fucking scary video games and shit like this. Like, the writer always has to, like, try to convey that, like, it was Sonic the Hedgehog, but he was bleeding, but it wasn't like video game blood, it was real blood.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not that they're trying to do that, it's just they spend so long trying to describe it that is just like, it's not whatever image you're trying to convey, just let it go.
Yeah, because that's the thing is, it would be one thing too if he was expounding upon, but it's basically he's just restated hyper-realistic like 80 times. It's like, we get it.
Yeah, it was real, but you could tell it was a cartoon, but it looked real. But it was a cartoon. He seems
awful shocked. Like, hasn't he ever seen Hey Arnold? The same kind of animation technique in that. It's like real, but then it's not because his head's shaped like a football. Bad joke.
Yeah. There are real football-headed children.
Oh, there are. I've seen them.
Yeah. I don't know why he got knocked for his head. Everyone in that show had weird fucking heads.
Right.
I was always like, but he's the only one who got bullied for it. Also, I thought his head looked more like a taco, personally. But
my only question is, how the fuck did he put shirts on?
They showed that.
You have to turn his head sideways?
Nah, he just had to stretch the shit out of him. Man, he probably had to buy a new shirt every fucking day. I continue.
Step into it like my daughter gets into, like, I guess women in general get into dresses sometimes. Instead of pulling it over your head, you just stand in the neck hole and pull it up over your body because it's skinnier that way.
I continued my research, now focusing on finding people who were knowledgeable about this art form. I narrowed my search down to a few academics and animators and emailed them the lion still. This is like, I want to meet the academic who's like, interesting. Troll cartoons, you say?
In the exact style that I've dedicated my entire life to teaching in college.
Yeah.
Hyperrealism.
I got a response from one expert saying the style reminded him of Johann Strobel, an Austrian artist and animator who had moved to the United States in the 1930s. He had worked for Disney briefly before starting his own animation studio. He was known for his bizarre, deconstructionist approach to animation and had started his own small anti-art movement of sorts. Animators and cartoonists trained at his studio produced their own bizarre works, which often included violent and grotesque themes, despite the fact that the studio ostensibly marketed to children. The email went on to explain that Strobel became increasingly obsessed with magic and the occult during his career. He became less and less functional until his studio was forced to close due to bankruptcy. Curiously, the studio was known to produce only a handful of original works of its own. Apparently, the animators had spent a lot of time deconstructing and replicating the works of other companies, mainly Disney, since they were the only major animation studio at the time, and altering them to make them surreal or disturbing. This would have opened the company up to piracy claims, except they never sold such works to the public, instead gifting them to a handful of collectors within the anti-art elite community. Strobel had also self-published a book, a manual of sorts, which contained prints of some of his still cartoons and instructions on his technique. It was simply titled Animation Deconstructed. I immediately determined to read it, but it took me ages to find a copy. I managed to track one down at a public library headquarters 3 states away. The book was in their special archive collection, so I couldn't get it through interlibrary loan. I had to drive there, where they would allow me to examine it in their archive reading room. The room was sparse, dusty, and poorly lit. It had the feel of a 1950s police interrogation room. I was allowed to read the book of interest at the single table under the supervision of a librarian. It was yellowed and the jacket was wrapped in protective plastic. The volume was short enough to read in an hour. Strobel was not as good at English as he was at drawing, so the self-published aspect really showed in the numerous grammar errors. There was a couple dozen prints in the book, all made in his unique hyper-realistic style. Again, they weren't photorealistic like other artists in the genre, but had a depth of detail and perspective that made them appear alive all the same. None of them did anything paranormal or anything like that, but there was one that managed to seriously frighten me. It was a cartoon snake, a cobra, with its fangs bared and a menacing look in its eyes. You know how some paintings of people have the eyes painted in such a way that as to give the impression of the subject's gaze following you as you view it from different angles? Well,
yes, I'm familiar with that cliche concept. Author.
Well, this piece didn't do that, so thank you for mentioning it. But it had some similar thing going on where the eyes of the snake appeared to bore right into you, straight through the page. I felt like the snake was going to strike up and dig its fangs into my arm. I didn't have a trippy experience like the lion animation, but it was still surreal and unnerving.
I'm curious how this person would react to watching something like the Blue Planet, especially like Blue Planet 3 series, like any of those like BBC like Ultra HD nature documentaries. You're like, oh my god, it's coming for me. Like he doesn't understand the concept of media.
No. So, yeah, I don't know. In addition to sections on art techniques, Strobel had also included a number of seemingly random placed critiques of the state of animation that could generously be described as educated rants. A frequent target of his criticisms was Walt Disney, who he decried as an amateur buffoon who was holding back the animation medium from its true potential.
Fair enough.
Okay, yeah. Walt Disney's perspective, I'm rich. Who's right? We'll leave it up to the audience. The author went on to emphasize the need to be bold and daring in animation and willing to push social taboos. I returned the volume to the librarian. I hadn't discovered anything that would help me with my search for the Aristicats tape, but at least I had come away with some interesting insights into the philosophy of the man who may have been behind it all. My next step was to visit Strobel's studio, which involved yet another cross-country road trip. He should have been back at work a month ago. People think he's dead. I started to wonder how much gas money I would have ended up spending by the end of my research for that damned video. Was it really cheaper than flying? No. The answer to that is no. At least the studio was still standing, though I had arrived anticipating that anything of major interest would have been looted decades ago. Still, I held out hope as I pulled onto a shopping center parking lot. The rest of my journey would have been on foot since the studio had predated modern roads. I crossed the interstate, there being only light traffic, and found and followed the old dirt road that would have been the sole source of vehicle traffic back then. By now,
no, but if it was a road, couldn't you still, like... It's like, it's not a modern road. Modern cars can't go on
no.
dirt roads.
No, if it's not, like, pure perfect pavement, every car made after 1920 will die on it.
I've seen posts on the internet. There's a good chance a Cybertruck might even get up a dirt road.
That's impossible. It'll get up a dirt road, but it won't be able to stop itself.
I'm riffing on a bunch of the posts I've seen of owners that are like, yeah, look, this truck, look how good it does off-road. And they're like posting pictures of like driving on like gravel roads and like dirt roads. And it's like, that's not off-road. Those are just unpaved roads. Like my Nissan Rogue does that. Yeah.
It took me 2 hours to reach the location, but... Oh, hang on. I skipped a bit. And found and followed the old dirt road, which had been the sole source of vehicle traffic back then. By now, it was largely overgrown, and I cursed myself for not bringing a machete. Well, you should just have a machete. If you're going to go on a long expedition for some shit, you should always have a machete on you.
I know. See, I've been thinking about I need to get out in nature more. Not because I need to connect with nature, but I need a machete.
I need a machete to connect with nature as I cut my way through. It took my...
Sir, this is a garden center.
I ruined the local Kroger's gardening section. I'm on a journey.
I made it through alive. That's another thing I'd do if I was a billionaire. It'd be fun to just dress like Dr. Livingston with that pith hat, I think they're called, the hard hats, and the all khakis, and it just machete your way through the fern section of a Kroger. I don't think they could send you to jail if you paid for all this stuff afterwards. Like, maybe they still could, but...
well, don't pay for it. Go on another journey.
Fuck,
I said lost.
I literally started this thought with if I was a billionaire. Billionaires don't go to jail anyway. So
I probably bought the damn. This is my Kroger.
Well, honestly, you wouldn't even have to buy the Kroger or pay for the damages. You're a billionaire. They'd be like, oh, and I got the added advantage that I'm a white male. They'd be like, rich white guy, wish there was something we could do, but. Society's not set up to deal with this. Anyway.
So, I'm going to just say it right now. There's still a decent chunk of this story to go, so we're going to go over that hour mark because I want to finish it. I know.
So you're saying shut the fuck up, Steve.
No, I'm saying because I know your recordings have gotten fucked up when we hit the hour mark. Keep an eye on that and just restart your record or start recording. Keep your shit recording is what I'm trying to say.
I'll do my best, Captain.
Yeah. Hold the line. It took me 2 hours to reach the location. It was a one-story wooden building with its windows boarded up and foliage growing all around it. I walked the perimeter looking for a way in that wouldn't open me up to charges of breaking and entering.
Yeah, because that's...
Yeah. Though I seriously...
You're tracking down a mysterious, all-powerful cabal, but you don't want to break and enter. That's fine.
Though I seriously doubted anyone would ever know or care I had been here in any case. To my disappointment, no entryway had been left by previous urban explorers, and I had to hack away the boards of one window with a hatchet I had brought.
Man, dude just walking around with hatchets and machetes.
Well, he wished he had a machete, but he brought a hatchet. Right.
Well, then why the fuck wasn't he using the hatchet? That can double as a machete. That works.
Well, dual-wield, man. it may have been easier to smash down the floor or smash down the door, but that felt somewhat less ethical. You're breaking into a joint.
Yeah. That clearly has been ignored for a bazillion years anyway. Like,
yeah.
I'm not a anarchist break the law type guy by nature, but I don't think I'd feel too bad about a building that clearly has had no human interaction in decades. Like,
yeah, I would feel nothing about it. In fact, I did feel nothing about it. When I was a little kid, we had an abandoned shack across our house, and I just
burned it down. Oh.
No, I went over there when I was a little kid, and I just threw rocks through the window.
Yeah,
because
I mean, at that point, the only way to do anything with the building is to demolish it and rebuild anyway. I think a broken window would be the least.
I remember the owner came and, like, basically
helped you. He started checking them too.
No, he came and, like, afterwards he yelled at my parents that I had broken his windows, but it wasn't like he was living there. It was literally like, you could make a better shelter out of shit you find in the woods. It was like that run down. So to this day, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done it, but I don't know what he was mad about. Because, like, it really seemed victimless to me.
I gave you air conditioning, man.
Yeah, it's like, you weren't going to rent it. Fuck off. There was, of course, no source of light except the now open windowway, but I had had the foresight to bring 3 high-powered LED lamps in my backpack, which I now set up around the floor. Relieved that I did not see any scurrying or slithering.
One flashlight would probably work as good as 3 stationary lights.
Yeah. I love to break and enter and then light the fucking joint up like a goddamn club. The place seemed smaller on the inside, barely more spacious than my basement home. There was no furniture except a couple broken easels on the floor. They probably sold off the tables and desks to pay off their debts, I thought. Some scuff marks were visible on the wooden floor. There was a low wooden partition that sectioned off a small segment of the room. I guessed that this was where the administrative desk had been, while the rest of the floor was used for actual animation work. Like I said, I hadn't really been expecting to find anything important, but it was still disappointing. I spent the next couple hours pacing the floor, wondering if the whole trip had been a waste of time and mileage.
Yep.
Yeah. I was about to back up my lamps and leave when I discovered a trap door behind the floor partition. I had taken one of the lamps off the floor to perch it on top of the partition, and the light now allowed me to see the outline of the trap door along with its hinges and latch. The door was about 3 feet by 2 feet. I grew excited and opened it. Annoyingly, the door did not appear to have a mechanism for staying open, and was too heavy for me to hold up. I had to back out through the window and back several times just to bring some rocks to prop it up, but the contents of the compartment were worth it. The compartment was about 3 feet deep and contained what looked like diagrams for animation or film devices, along with various little parts, knobs, bolts, lenses, and the like, all scattered at the bottom. I studied these with fascination, but couldn't make heads or tails of the schematics. I tried fitting some of the parts together, with no success. I decided against taking these items with me. I had rationalized that violating the law by entering this place unlawfully was worth pulling back the curtain on whatever had caused my childhood trauma. But these items were unlikely to be of value to that end, and thus stealing them for my own curiosity would go beyond the bounds of that justification. However, I did photograph each one of them just in case.
Nope. Yeah, you're a nerd. Steal them.
Yeah.
Again, it's a secret compartment in an abandoned building. Who's gonna miss them?
It was against my moral code to take them. It was not against my code to photograph them and sell the bootlegs online. The next few months were uneventful. Once again, I felt like I had hit a dead end. I took a break from the mission and focused on life obligations. I had just managed to comfortably put the lost episode search on the back burner and feel contented when I received an email with the subject, "What you've been looking for." I hesitated a good few minutes before opening the message.
It was hot cougars in his area.
Yeah. Sexy Aristicats in your area. Finally, the version. Hello. If you want answers, meet me at this address in time. My heart raced. The email wasn't from any of the addresses I had messaged. I instinctively felt I was about to finally get closure and was suddenly terrified. Perhaps even more terrified than I had been at any point before in this journey. More than when I was run off the road. More than when I was hypnotized by a cartoon lion. More than when I had been threatened through the TV in a motel room. My hands were shaking so much I could hardly use the keyboard to navigate to a new tab and look up the address.
You know what? I think it's very reasonable to feel terrified about the thought of meeting a complete stranger that randomly emailed you at a location you're unfamiliar with at this time that they specified. Yeah. Like, that's the normal thing to be like, no, that seems
that's
terrifying.
Bad news. Yeah.
Right. Don't do that.
It was an empty lot from an abandoned building that had been razed years ago. The Google Maps street view looked somewhat foreboding, but it was within comfortable driving distance of my apartment, which terrified me even more to realize the sender knew what city I lived in. Still, I asked off work for the specified day. The boss is just like, son of a bitch, just quit, dude. And was racked with dread until it arrived, barely able to concentrate on my job. And drove to the lot 3 hours ahead of time, parking my car in the street as was typical for the neighborhood. It was a sunny spring day and the wind made me uncomfortable despite the warm weather. Each passing car made me apprehensive, particularly the ones that appeared to slow down, but I had an overwhelming urge to drive away as the appointed time drew near. When the car stopped at the lot exactly at the time, I was surprised to see a woman get out. She had cropped red hair and appeared to be in her early 40s. She was wearing a black leather jacket and walked right up to me. She smiled slightly. "Hi, you can call me Kathy. I'm from the group you've been looking for." I swallowed and rendered a quiet greeting. She didn't look threatening. I had trouble imagining what could have possessed her to join an organization like the Lost Media Group, but right now I had other things to be concerned with. "Don't worry, this isn't a setup," she reassured, reading my apprehension. "If we wanted to do you in, we could have and would have done it already." "So then, what do you want?" I interjected. "We want you to stop looking into us," she stated plainly. "And to that end, I managed to convince the higher-ups to let me show you what you've been looking for so that you and we can put this behind us." "You mean the Aristicats video?" I asked. She nodded. "For security reasons, we obviously can't just give it to you." "What the fuck? He found it from a garage sale when he was a kid. Like, you're not that protective of this shit."
Right. That's what I'm curious about, because it's like...
No, it's top secret, even though you just fucking bumblefucked your way into it.
This idea that they'd put a couple episodes out there, but they're like, oh, but if they knew we had possession, it's like, I was dubbing VHS tapes since I was old enough to say VHS. Like, you cannot put a VHS tape out there and expect it to not be copied immediately.
"For security reasons, we can't just give it to you. The best I could arrange was for you to be allowed to see it, under supervision, at one of the abandoned movie theaters we used to give private viewings of our works for select patrons. We're about to leave that location anyway, and needless to say, you shouldn't even think about telling people we were ever there." I nodded and grunted. "That's weird." Tim Allen.
She changed her mind and left immediately.
Yeah. If it meant finally getting answers, I was willing to put up with a little more bullshit. "I hope you have the whole day free, because the theater is several hours away." I nodded again, suspecting that she already knew the answer, and that I was fired. We got in her car and were off. We drove in silence for the first hour or so, then I asked her why the group made lost episodes. She waited a few moments before answering. Well, I guess you could say we aim to challenge the status quo of programming and give animators a chance to really test their limits. That's why I joined when the organization invited me. And why do you leak them to the public if you want to keep them secret? We don't leak them. We don't leak them. Sometimes they just get out and people who weren't intended to see them do. I don't know how you ended up seeing one of our works as a kid, but it wasn't supposed to be. And what about the Kibito Gamma broadcast? Some members of our organization was messing around when he wasn't supposed to, or maybe it was a TV broadcast only intended to be seen by members back when we were a little more lax about security. Look, I said we would show you what you've been looking for. Beyond that, I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to satisfy your curiosity about our inner workings.
You just answered a hell of a lot of questions.
Yeah, you pretty much solved it.
Right.
I was silent for a few more minutes. Her answers were suspect. The Lost Media Group seemed like the type of group that would find pleasure in shocking and traumatizing random people with their twisted works. And I didn't quite buy that all exposure to non-insiders was unintentional. I thought back to the FBI report. I also wondered if she was completely happy with the choice she had made to join the organization. Well, I've already seen part of your Aristocats edit recently, I finally said. Kathy pursed her lips, and I could see in her eyes she was briefly considering whether it was worth trying to pretend she didn't know what I was talking about. She decided against it. Yeah, sorry about that, I guess. But I guess they figured if we gave you a good scare, you might give up and leave us alone. I was annoyed at her choice of words, as if they were the only ones who wanted to be left at peace all the time. I could only wonder if it had been her idea. I also wondered if she knew I had seen several of their other projects as well. When you visited Strobel's old studio, that was when we decided it was time to make a peace offering to get you off our back. The theater appeared to be one of those many theaters.
That's also an interesting tactic. Like, when you did this thing, we decided that you're dangerously close to winning, so we decided to...
I guess. I'm still not entirely sure what winning looks like here. When you visited Strobel's old studio, that was when we decided it was time to make a peace offering to get you off our back. The theater appeared to be one of those many theaters that had been opened during the 90s blockbuster boom and then abandoned during the 2000s. It was along the interstate, isolated from any other buildings. We entered through a side door Kathy had a key for. I don't know why I said it like that. Key for.
I was gonna let it slide, but it did sound weird.
Yeah. The lobby was unlit except for the sun outside. I could see a ticket counter, a concessions area, and posters for old blockbusters on the wall. Covering the floor was carpeting of a faded, colorful pattern. Adjacent to the small food court was an empty room that I guess used to be the video arcade. Kathy told me to give her my phone, which I did. She then escorted me down the gallery hallway, to the last gallery. She asked me if I was sure I wanted to see this. I answered yes, and she said I could sit anywhere I wanted. I fucking hope so. All this shit only to be like, you gotta get a crappy side seat.
Yeah. Or the one like right up front where your neck's like straight up. And
I think it's the version from my childhood, but I could only see like a foot of it.
The one seat with an obstructed view, there's a pillar right. That's where you gotta sit, buddy.
I chose a seat near the back while she went up to run the projector. I began feeling scared. Sitting there in the dark abandoned gallery was very reminiscent of sitting in the dark watching the Aristocats all those years ago. Except,
well, I hope so, because you're about to watch. The whole point is that, yeah, right. Like,
Yeah, you have to watch the same cartoon from fucking beginning to end again.
And they're not lying to you about it. You know this going in, but you're like, but it's eerie because it reminds me of that time I saw the fucked up Aristocats movie.
Sitting in the dark abandoned gallery was very reminiscent of sitting in the dark watching the Aristocats all those years ago, except that all the extra space made it even more ominous. When the feature started, I could tell immediately that the audio was off. It sounded shrieky and low quality. Otherwise, the movie was normal up until the point when the butler decided to get rid of the cats. Instead of drugging them and leaving them abandoned like in the normal movie, he drowned them in the river. It went downhill from there. Suddenly, I was a 5-year-old boy again, watching in horror as characters were mutilated, decapitated, and burned, all while strange visual and audio effects were applied. One particularly shocking scene featured real footage of cats attacking and killing a man. In real time, lines were drawn over the scene, covering it in sketchwork until it had become a completely animated version of itself. It was done with such absolute perfection of technique that I was sure Strobel must have done that bit himself. I eventually got a grip and was able to sit through the rest of the thing calmly. It wasn't pleasant, but I was at least relieved to finally be getting it over with. When it was over, I think I had tears in my eyes. Kathy drove me back to the empty lot, and it was dark by the time we arrived. Before I got out, she spoke to me one last time. Now listen to me. You've found what you were looking for, and now that you have, you need to let it go. I took a big risk even pushing to let you in behind the scenes for that brief moment. If you continue pursuing information about our organization, we will have to take more drastic measures. We exchanged goodbyes and she drove off. For years I kept my end of the agreement to never speak a word about our encounter to anyone. However, recently I have been reconsidering the bargain. A few days ago, someone reached out to me on the web asking me for information on lost episodes. They claim to have seen one as a child and are hoping to find closure for their experience. I'm debating with myself whether it's worth letting them in on the secret, or if it would be better for their own sake if I convinced them they imagined the whole thing.
It's a test, dummy. Don't do it.
The end.
I was right. They killed him because he said he's considering it, and then they just shot him.
Well, you just wrote the whole fucking thing, so you didn't really keep your part of the bargain.
Yeah, that too.
What you do is you charge the dude $1,000.
Yeah,
that's the lesson. Yeah, it's real. Yeah, it's real. Now get the fuck out of my cabin.
You want to know? You want some proof? Here's a picture of a still image of a movie I had on my phone, and this first-hand account with no hard evidence.
You ever see the Lion King? You ever see the Lion King like this?
Strobel Studio.
It's real. It looks like a cartoon, but it also looks real.
Want some proof of the stuff going down in Strobel Studio? Well, too damn bad. I was too much of a pussy to take it home with me. Here's some photographs, though.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Not a bad story. Kind of a really kind of flat ending, though.
Yeah. Well, and it was one of those... My biggest complaint with movies is when they're like long just to be long, and I feel like the story was long just to be long. I don't know.
Well, I think like it didn't pay off the conspiracy.
Yeah.
Really. And like you do that much build and you have an organization like clearly willing to kill a guy for getting too close to their shit. You don't really elaborate why.
Yeah.
It's that important. And
especially because it's like the big, like, okay, what I'll tell you is we like to make anti-art art, like avant-garde art. But if the world ever knew about this...
the world ever knew about how we...
There's very public groups that do that. Right.
Yeah.
It's like... It's...
I don't know. It's a weird story. It leaves me with more questions than answers. But I thought,
But I like
for
that
as long as it is, I actually think it's like, just, I think it's written pretty damn well.
And I appreciate that it's turned into a 2-part, 7-chapter story, all revolving around the Aristocats.
Yeah, I think that's the most impressive thing is if you told me I have to write a fucking story about the Aristocats, I'd be fucked. Like, that's a 2-sentence story for me. I had to watch the Aristocats. God has abandoned us.
Aristocats and make it scary. It's like, it's probably one of the ways, one of the feasible ways to do that.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the 2-parter mega pasta. I'm tired of talking. So
I'm just tired in general. Like,
yeah, so we're fucking done.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening, and to go watch the Aristocats. Let me know what you find. Bye.